Peace to the saints. We're talking about a critical topic, which is something that could change the housing market. It could further enslave Americans. It's a new dream that's being sold. And Donald Trump is a salesman. I find it quite disturbing that our president, does meme coin rug pulls. That's pretty crazy. And I guess this is metaphorically speaking the next scam. The fundamentals of the American economy probably haven't been sound since Tricky Dicky, maybe even earlier than that. So we're going to get into it. I want to listen to how the media is pitching this idea. Uh, but after I go through a couple media representations of Trump's idea, I then want to take out the time to go through a bit of the history because the history is so very important. And unfortunately, our grandparents, for whatever reason, haven't really made us aware of the ways in which the world has changed. So let's go ahead and dig in. As we go through, do share your comments, questions below, and using the information below or using the information on this profile. The important thing to understand is that, and I was thinking about this earlier, younger, or I should say my earlier age, I was a little too cavalier and I used to think that things didn't apply to me. I used to think things didn't matter that did matter. So, for example, you might be thinking, Marquette, I'm not planning to buy a house anytime soon. It doesn't matter. You see, understanding the banking industry, lending, and the mortgage industry, it has a greater impact than only on those who are buying homes. It impacts the economy at large. And furthermore, if you're going to mature, get older, and mature financially and otherwise, you'll probably want to buy a house at some point. You should know what these changes are going to be and how they might affect you. We're talking about money here, ladies and saints. We're talking about serious stuff. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into this work. Here we go. And I'm starting off with the shortest one. I do have PBD queued up because I like the way he explains things because I think he speaks to the generation of folks who are age 16 to 35. And so I'm curious to hear what he suggests. But let's start off with the simple piece. This is nearly a 3-minute video.
All right, so President Trump appeared to float a major change to home buying on social media over the weekend. The president posted this image on Truth Social.
Now, this is President Roosevelt. We're clearly not about to get much of a lesson because this is only a 3-minute video. What you should be asking yourself is, what context was President Roosevelt in that he felt he needed to do this? Is this something that happens when the economy is strong or when the economy is weak? What are the implications? 30-year mortgage. At the time, how was that received by the American population? Does a 30-year deal sound like a good deal? Does that sound like something you want to be a part of? Does a 50-year deal sound like something you want to be a part? It sounds ludicrous. Yeah, half of the people watching right now, why would the bank even let you get a 50-year mortgage? You're probably not even going to live that long. What's the life expectancy in America? Hold on one second. This is ridiculous. We got to buy a house when you're 8 years old. This is ludicrous. Life expectancy in the United States is 78 years old. 78 years old. With that logic, I wouldn't even want to give a mortgage to Marquett Burton. Like, I don't know, is bro going to be alive to pay this off? We're getting ridiculous here. I shouldn't say we, I should say the American government is getting ridiculous here. The idea that they put you in a position to where you can't afford to pay for shelter, where you can't own anything, and you're being abused by the taxation system. It is truly angering. We're in revolutionary times, and we will move forward with the revolution.
With a headshot of former President Franklin Delano Roosevelt under a title of 30-year mortgage and a headshot of President Trump under a title of 50-year mortgage.
This guy is a moron. You should be ashamed of that. You should be ashamed of the idea that in the wealthiest country that has ever existed, you're telling people to take half a century merely to provide a roof over their head, the most basic of human things: shelter, sex, and sustenance. It shouldn't take you 50 years to pay for a roof over your head.
The director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency then followed up saying, quote, "We are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer."
Now, this is basically the wealthiest class of America and of the world taking advantage of everyone else and saying, you know, I might own a couple houses, multi-million-dollar houses, apartments in Tribeca and, you know, flats across the world. And but for you peons, I'm going to let you all struggle just to get one house. And I'll let you struggle for your whole life. That's great. It's like, and, you know, he's proud to put his name and face on this scam. Whew, there's so much. I've been doing so much research and I got a lot to share. Not on this, but on some other stuff.
Is it really? For more on this, let's join
This chick looks not intelligent. Yeah, I hate to say it, but she doesn't even look intelligent. But let's hear what she has to say.
We are joined now by CBS
I just don't feel confident she's about to give any good information.
News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady, who is helping me stumble through things. It's a Monday, so I'm still pulling myself together.
Thank you, effeminate black guy, ambiguously black guy, who might not be black. He might be Latino or Indian, like just we don't know. Bro, shut up. Let this ditz tell us what she has to say.
Kind to yourself.
Thank you, Kelly. I will be.
So it's basically.
Can you guys stop bad joking? Can I get some information here? Give me some information here. Jesus.
The same thing as a 30-year mortgage, except you would pay that loan back over a 50-year period instead of a 30-year period. Now, you brought up.
That was a completely idiotic comment. I need you to say something we couldn't think of on our own. It's basically the same thing as a 30-year mortgage. It's got accepted 50 years. Well, thanks, Dodo. I think we all realize that part. How about you give us some meaningful information, like you're going to pay a lot more in interest? How about you give us some meaningful information, like we've damn near doubled the term of the term of the loan, but we've not chopped the monthly payments in half? Why don't you give us some meaningful information, like you're going to be just paying interest up front? Come on now.
That post that the president had said 50-year mortgage, and then there was FDR with the 30. Actually, you know, you go back to prior to the Great Depression, prior to that FDR administration, there was no such thing as a long-term 30-year mortgage. So something like this has been.
He just showed an image with FDR being the creator of the 30-year mortgage. So, of course, that didn't exist before then. Oh, my goodness. Was she not around for that part?
Done before, just not to this extent. And you think, why is this happening right now? I mean, there is an affordability crisis when it comes to home ownership.
Is that new doofus? If there wasn't an affordability crisis, FDR wouldn't have created the 30-year mortgage. Okay. Now you might say, Marquett, well, before we had the privilege of taking a damn near a quarter of a century to actually more than a quarter of a century to pay off a freaking house. Well, what were people doing? What were Americans doing? Were they just homeless? Were they homeless if they couldn't get loans? Before the widespread adoption of the 30-year fixed rate mortgage in the United States, the system was significantly different, particularly before the Great Depression and the federal reforms of the 1930s. Now, mind you, I'm a capitalist. They say capitalism is cyclical. And there's boom and bust. I find it curious that the quality of capitalism seems to degrade every time it busts. Makes you start to wonder about these other systems, perhaps what the Chinese are doing. Anyways, short-term mortgages, typically 5 to 10 years. Marquette, you're saying I could have paid off a house in 5 to 10 years? Yeah, that's what people were doing. Yeah, it was a different time. This was the norm for residential mortgages. The term short meaning the full loan came due quickly. And apparently it was manageable, right? So you're telling me that in the richest country that has ever been, the uppermost class, the political class, the plutocrats have been degrading your quality of life over time. They've been devaluing the dollar. They've been enriching themselves and allowing the non-elite to suffer greatly. Mm? Yes, that's what's been happening. And they try to hide away the history of what used to be. I remember I'd hear my grandmother say things, and old black women is just black women, maybe just old and young, typically a bit negative. And I used to listen to my grandmother and think, shut up, what do you know? But she would speak wisdom. Some of the things she would say would be hard to believe, like a hamburger used to be 10 cents. I used to be like, Shorty is senile. She is senile. And she is also in denial because there's no way a hamburger was 10 cents. It's impossible. No, that's how much they've devalued the dollar. It was true. She said you just go catch a flight like a bus. You go through, there's no security check. You just pay for your ticket and get on. What? They don't harass you and treat you like a stranger and put their finger in places that make you think you're getting a proctal exam? Is that even a word? Proctal? You know what I mean? When the doctor's like, and you're like, ah! Isn't there better technology than that? Point is, the government over time has stolen your freedom. They've stolen your savings. They've stolen all of the things that you really would like to keep. Huh? Come on now. The history is important. It's important that our elders teach us what has been. You think you're free. You have not the foggiest idea of what freedom is. Even myself, I'm not much older than some of you are older than me. Some of you are the same age, and many of you are younger. When I was in high school, we'd go down to Mexico with no passport at all. Not even a real ID. I didn't have a driver's license or a government ID. I kid you not, you can go into Mexico and back out of Mexico with a high school ID, which means basically a fake ID, nothing real. Yes, come on now. Non-government issued ID. Anyways, these loans typically require the borrower to make small interest only, often, or interest mostly payments for the terms of the loan. At the end of the term, a very large lump sum payment, balloon payment, covering the remaining principal was due. Now, apparently it worked out. Apparently it was working out until it didn't. And when it didn't work out, that was due to the crash of the stock market. Now, one thing we should ask ourselves is, can we have capitalism without a stock market? Come on. It's an important question. Yes, indeed. Since most borrowers couldn't save up the full principal in a few years, they typically had to refinance the loan, get a new mortgage to pay off the balloon payment. This worked well until the Great Depression, when banks stopped refinancing, leading to massive foreclosures. Well, the question that never gets answered is like, did there have to be a Great Depression? Does there have to be a stock market? And if it was so common that everyone was refinancing, why weren't the loans just on longer terms? And was the refi favorable to the people refining? Were they refining and getting better interest rates? These are all really important questions to ask. And the truth is that we should have been taught all of this in history, particularly a class called American history. And I would dare say that there's a reason that you're not taught a lot of basic things like, how do you do your taxes? You go to a government school, public high school, which is a government school. The government issues taxes, but they don't teach you how to do your taxes. Maybe it's on purpose. Shout out to Frank supporting the work, came in via Stripe, or via the Stripe link in the description. I appreciate you. Also acknowledge Marcus. Just went and got dripped out. Oh man, he got some cold fleece sweats. And this is a good time to do it. Got the long sleeve man and woman brand. He also got the Patriarch t-shirt. Good drip indeed. Okay, very good. And shout out to the folks supporting the work. I appreciate you. May I also acknowledge via PayPal. Shout out to Dominic, writes Peace of Saints Tuition. I also acknowledge Miles. Writes, Peace of Saints, my full message is sent by email. I'll take a look-see. Mr. Gardner writes, Peace of Saints tuition. I sent you an email regarding Saints weekend, and I did get it, and we'll make sure that you are all set. And I appreciate that. It'll be a pleasure to see you again. And Miles sent an email. He writes, Peace of the Saints, Mr. Burton. What are your thoughts on Trump's one-year deal with China? I think that one-year deals are pretty pathetic, especially when you're a second-term president with 3 years remaining, number one. And then number two, when you're up against a dictator who has an infinite amount of time. It only reveals that you are losing the trade war and much else. He writes, in the recent Republican-Jewish coalition rally that's happened recently with Officer Tatum and the rest of the conservative sellouts. Well, that's not a new thing, right? That the certain population has lobbied and invested money and is making every effort to ensure their domination. That's nothing new. The conservative white supremacists are infighting right now, and it all stems from Tucker and Nick Fuentes. Also, why do all of their white saviors crumble under pressure? Well, I think it's because of the fundamental fact that any strong white man does not, is probably less inclined to be a white supremacist. The white supremacist position is typically held by those who are certainly inferior individuals, and it's fueled by that primitive drive to procreate, survival of the fittest. But being that you're an individual who's inferior, you have fewer options. And then they start to lash out at the black man, believing he's taking good white women that he could have, which is not the case. And though it's the idea, like the driving idea of survival and knowing that they're having a harder time getting a mate. That's why you find a lot of their leaders are unattractive and incels, like Nerd Fuentes, virgin by choice. I personally think he's a homosexual. I think he's a homosexual by my estimation. But anyways, I say that to say the guy who actually embodies the Aryan Superman ideal, tall, good-looking, chiseled jaw, great genetics, well, he doesn't need to be invested in racism because he can get all the beautiful white women he wants. He doesn't feel like he's in competition with black athletes. He feels like he's going to do well in the marketplace. There's enough to go around because he's, a top dog eating top shelf and, taking the cream of the crop. So he doesn't feel as though he has to disparage the black man who apparently is a pretty attractive character.
Cost prohibitive for many Americans. And I was actually reading a Redfin analysis, and they say that U.S. homebuyers on average are spending 39% of their income on housing when 30% is the rule of thumb.
That's way too high.
Exactly. And so something like this, the idea is to get people lower monthly payments, may be able to afford.
Okay, now pay attention to this part. They're talking about lower monthly payments. Well, if that's the case, that it's lower monthly payments, let's see how much lower. You've all doubled the term of the loan, right? A doubling would be from 30 years to 60 years, but when you went from 30 years to 50 years, it's damn near double. So the in line with nearly doubling the term of the loan, will you be nearly cutting in half the monthly payments? At least give me 30% off, right? Which is to say, if I was going to pay $2,000 per month for a mortgage, is it now going to be like $1,200? I mean, that would make sense if things were fair. But we know when interest is involved, usury, riba is involved, then things probably aren't going to be so good looking.
Afford a home.
Sure, but there would still be a supply issue with housing.
Yes.
People might sit in these homes for longer if you have a longer mortgage. And when I saw the 50-year number, I thought to myself, what is the average age in the U.S. again? I think it's maybe people in their 80s if they're lucky.
Right.
So is it really advisable to take a 50-year loan on anything, considering not just the potential gains, but the debts if you die?
Now, mind you, 2 minutes and they've still not said anything of consequence. I think one comical consideration is if you are, say, 30 and you take a 50-year mortgage, and most people are not going to live to 80 in the United States, especially as health increasingly declines, and the low quality foods will carry on. I think we got Jeff Bezos is making fake salmon. So, anyways, if you pass away and you're just about to finish paying off that mortgage, what is your land in your home pass to the state, to the government, because you didn't finish paying it off? You're probably not going to have kids, right? Because we have a declining birth rate. Women are too educated to have children. So this is all very interesting stuff. It's like yet another way that the West finds to hurt itself, instead of figuring out the fundamental issue, which is, why are Americans not able to earn enough? Why is the U.S. dollar not strong enough? Why can't we solve those issues? Instead, they say, well, here's another way to put yourself into long-term debt,
etc.
Well, and that's where there's been a lot of pushback, because the pros, as we just said, it's a lower monthly payment. And I actually crunched the numbers. A $500,000 mortgage, 6% interest rate. On a 50-year mortgage, you would pay over $400 less a month. So that's really attractive. But
well, first off, why are those numbers not being put on the screen so we can look at them and inspect them? Number one. Number two, did you say a $500,000 mortgage? Did she say a $500,000 mortgage? I just think it's worth her justifying why we're using certain numbers. Did she say a 6% interest rate? I'd just be curious to hear as to why it's a 6% interest rate. Like, what I would have liked her to have done is said, hey, the average credit score in America is 700, whatever it may be. It's probably a lot lower than that, right? Probably like 650. I don't know what's the average credit score. Yeah, whatever it is, it sucks. So if she said, hey, an average credit score in America is a 650, the average home price in America is 400K, average monthly payment on a 30-year fix at 7% or 8%, which is more likely for this credit score, is going to be this monthly amount. You're going to save this percentage. So your payment would go from 2,000 to, 1,800, or fill in the blank. I think that it's just like woefully bad. Like,
your point,
terrible.
It means you're going to be.
There we go. There's no numbers here.
Be spending a lot more in interest over the life of that.
Pros, lower monthly payment. Yeah, most people who are dumb are short-term thinkers. Also, people who are poor, they're illiquid. Of course, they're going to be short-term thinkers. And here's the funny thing on the pros, they listed the same damn thing 2 times. No, really, check this out. Marquett, are you a genius of some sort? No, I just pay attention. For example, lower monthly payment. Well, that means you're going to have more money, right? Then it says more room in budget. You dumb F, that's the same thing. Did you try to fool me? Cons, pay more interest. That's one thing. Second con, longer to build up equity. That's a separate thing. So the 2 cons are 2 separate things. The pros, there's only one pro, but it's listed 2 separate times. Come on now. You guys with me here? Are you with me here? Are you understanding here? Shout out to Robert. Just went and got the Make America Straight Again hat. Yes, indeed. Now, don't wear that to a restaurant. You heard me? Because people are mad. They're sick out here. You heard me? Shout out to Darren. He writes, peace of the saints. Appreciate you. Shout out to RTBLA. Writes, peace of the saints. Respect, tuition, assassin, or nothing. Albatar. Shout out to the real ones. Good to see you again. Yes, indeedy.
Loan. And a lot of critics have said you could die before you own your home. It's going to take a lot longer to actually really.
And all she needs to do, instead of saying what a lot of critics have said, is just Google the simple question of what is the average age of a first-time home buyer in America. I'll Google it, since apparently she doesn't want to. Average age of first-time home buyer, 40 years old. Damn, Lord, that's a lot higher than I thought. The average or median age of a first-time home buyer has reached an all-time high of 40 years. So now you take that 40 years plus a 50-year mortgage. Now we're talking about you need to live to 90 years old to pay that off. Nah, hell nah. Your property is going straight to the government. You probably didn't have kids, and if you did have kids, they might not be able to take this thing over. That's insanity. This is a real nut job idea. Really, it's a crackpot scheme.
Build up that equity, but proponents say, well, better to even have the chance to own a home. So that's really where you're hearing the pros and cons. Is it advisable? If you can avoid it, I would say don't go with it.
Right. And everybody has a different financial situation.
Okay, great. So she said don't go with it. Now let's see if people are being honest as we go through. And I think this was an atrocious breakdown, mind you. I think she did a really bad job at explaining that. So my thesis that she's a moron, my thesis that she's a dumb moron was very true. And that's how much I thought she was not smart. I said dumb moron. That's redundant. It's completely unnecessary. But it turned out to be true.